So you can leave the screen, you can leave the camera this way, and when you share the presentation, whoever's watching will automatically see the presentation. So you don't leave the camera. Leave the camera. Wherever you show the screen, they'll automatically see the presentation. Wherever you show the screen, they'll automatically see the presentation.
So do you guys want to join us?
To mute people. Mute the TV.
Don't be shy.
No,
Just mute the TV.
but I don't want the other people to hear it either. It's someone watching and they're not muted. So let me just mute them.
Shall we begin?
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Josh.
Thanks so much, everyone. Are we good to go on this live thing?
Yeah. Okay.
We're live. Well, welcome everyone. Good afternoon, and especially welcome to Mariana. And is it Jennifer? I don't know. Hi. We just spoke on the phone a few minutes ago, so it's good to see you both, our guests today, and welcome, of course, to our colleagues. We'll go very quickly around the table for a quick introduction. So, Mariana, you get a sense of who we are, and you'll find that it's not just UNDP. We have colleagues from other UN agencies, which is a wonderful thing. The innovation agenda remit is really managing to bring together a lot of the UN forward thinkers around some of the issues. We just come from a 2-day workshop last week on data, new forms of data, and it was a joint. I think we had 17 agencies around the table. Some colleagues from UNICEF particularly here I can see, and we have other colleagues from UN Women. It was a very good way to bring that collective thinking around real issues around development, how to address those. And today is yet another one of these occasions. This is one of our series of innovation talks, and we're very pleased to have Mariana Amatullo here. She's a scholars in residence at the Art Center College of Design out of Pasadena, California, and of course she's also the co-founder and vice president of Design Matters. So we'll do a very quick round of introduction. We'll give you the floor for your presentation. Again, my name is Bernardo with the innovation team in UNDP, and we'll take it with you.
Hi, I'm Malika. I'm with the UNDP innovation team here at headquarters.
Hi, my name is Daniel Perez. I'm with the Equator Initiative, UNDP as well.
Hi, my name is Michaela. So I'm with UNICEF innovation team.
I'm Marina Kono. I'm with UNICEF Innovation and also a former alumni of Design Matters.
Oh, there we go.
I'm Jennifer May. I'm the director of Design Matters Art Center.
I'm Daniel with UNICEF Knowledge Management. Owen Fitzgerald, UNDP Equator.
Annie Vernick, also.
Christina Alconis, DIG, Transparency, Centralized Evaluations, and
Sarah Schnarr, I'm with UNDP Innovation Facility. Elisa Hara, UNDP Social and Environmental Standards. Real People, UNDP Coordination. With Harish, UNDP Innovation Facility.
John Torrent, United Nations Alliance of Civilizations. I work on media and information literacy initiatives.
I'm Abraham Joseph, Special Advisor to the Foreign Minister of East Timor, Timor-Leste. And prior to that, I worked for about 30 years with the UN Secretariat on development issues, writing the reports of the Secretariat on Africa, East development, on smaller states.
Excellent. Welcome everybody, and over to you.
Okay. So welcome and thank you so much for being here. It's really a delight to share this conversation with you and be amongst also close colleagues and collaborators at UNICEF Innovation. today what I will do, and I want to say welcome to those joining us on the live stream. And I understand there's a few second lag between the slides and the live stream. So for those joining us on the live stream, if they can bear with us as I move through the slides. What I wanted to do today is share a few insights from our practice at Art Center College of Design, where we work very closely with designers from all the disciplines we teach and organizations within the UN system and beyond to address questions of innovation. I also will start the talk just by giving a little bit of background of who we are at Art Center, and then really dwelling on some insights from my long research through a PhD program and his weatherhead in looking at processes of innovation and design in management and organizational change. And I had the great pleasure to look at the work of UNICEF Innovation and the team represented here by Mary and Dalia. So to get started, we are gathered here today, I think around this topic of innovation in development is attracting a lot of attention. And of course, you know this as practitioners on the front line of the space. It's also attracting a lot of discussion and new research in academia. And we, you may know of this Innovation for the International Development report. I believe UNDP is also included in that report. I had the opportunity to collaborate with Chris Fabian and the innovation team at UNICEF on a piece for that report. But when we think about innovation and a definition of innovation in international development, we're really looking at novel outcomes that can be implemented at scale. And for organizations in like yours, this notion of scale becomes paramount. So how does design as a discipline of practice and knowledge intersect with that very ambitious goal is a key question. And at our center, College of Design, we're very interested in this question, and we're taking it with a very big commitment because we are really training the next generation of innovators through design. And this is the mission statement of the school: learn to create, influence, change. We're an institution based in Pasadena in the west coast of the United States that has had a really lasting impact in shaping the form, the function of our times. And some of the images you see on the screen, very iconic images from the graphic design world to cinema, to transportation systems, to products. This is all work of our graduates. We're an institution that educates about 2,000 designers in every discipline of design, with a very important legacy in terms of the folks that graduate from our institution. So very much of a conservatory style of education focused on design. I had the opportunity about 16 years ago to join the institution with a background in humanities, but also with a background informally in international development and the product of kids of diplomats from Argentina. So I grew up in the halls here at headquarters through my dad's work here in New York and Geneva. And when we started, and I had the opportunity to think about a new academic and educational kind of model for our school, connecting the dots between the issues you're addressing in organizations like UNDP and the innovation work our designers are doing. And that became what we know now as Design Matters at our center. It's a 15-year-old program. It's an educational horizontal department where we collaborate and really curate projects that bring this mission forward, the idea that we can really think about action and engagement through design and design thinking methodologies. And we focus on 4 core arms or topics that allow us to aggregate projects and research and publications: public policy, global health, sustainable development, and social entrepreneurship. And these are really large mega topics that where design and design education intersects. And for us, the question of partnerships and partnerships with organizations like the UN to bring experiential education and making and doing and thinking about our institution as a lab for innovation is really very, very important. We're very proud to be associated with several bodies of the UN system as an NGO, and we remain one of the few design academic institutions to have these formal affiliations with DPI, UNFPA, and other funds. And so now going a little bit, that's a very quick introduction of who we are and what my practice is. So being involved in shaping this program and working with colleagues in my institution to really bring it to life kind of spurred the impetus for me to think about the research and theoretical foundations to kind of explain why this work can be replicable and why this work is valuable. And a lot of, I think that what design as a methodology for problem solving in innovation brings is summarized in this statement by this great management theorist: learning what the problem is the problem. And that kind of very open-ended framing that design brings to problems of innovation is something that I've seen firsthand in my practice. Obviously, many of you are very familiar with design thinking and the work that the Stanford D School and consultancies like IDEO have advanced and really made very popular in terms of how we might think of them as tools for problem solving in different contexts. And this is really the sequence, empathize, define, ideate, prototype, test that we know about and that many designers might use as you're thinking through designing programs. And this is, of course, not a linear sequence, but it is a sequence that's very iterative and cyclical. And it presents a lot of opportunity in the space of innovation as you're designing programs, because you can really think through assumptions that you might be making and coming back at them with fresh eyes to prototype them, test them before a program is fully blown, before an investment and a protocol is on the ground. Design thinking and these methodologies really allow for a human-centered approach, an approach about user needs that can become very, very valuable. In the work I did through the PhD in management at Case Western Reserve University, my study over 4 years was really a mixed method study that looked at qualitative and quantitative analysis to think through 3 different data sets, original data sets, to try to answer and really dwell on the key subject matter of design as a knowledge domain that can bring agency to innovation and to social innovation. And why was I interested in dwelling a little bit deeper in the subject, coming from practice and from Art Center? My position is that we still, despite the tools like design thinking that we just talked about, we still don't really understand what design looks like in this space. And it's still very much of a frontier space that we're all shaping together. And so one of the hopes that this research tried to address is to say, well, if we can codify and articulate how designers are working, how they're bringing value in innovation, we might elucidate the value of design and design period in any kind of space beyond international development and social innovation. And this was really the central argument that this dissertation and this research made, thinking about design as a strategic organizational capability that we might include in organizations and in programs to innovate upstream. I use for the research a number of wonderful literature and very, when I discuss social innovation in my work, this is the definition that really drives a lot of what I am looking at. The idea that innovation, but specifically social innovation, is a space where we're trying to build new capabilities and allow society to work with more agency. And this is a lot of research coming from the TEPSI report and the Young Foundation in the UK. And it's interesting research because it shows how innovation and social innovation are very multidimensional constructs and concepts that are acting not only at the area of creating new or novel insights, but that are really coming together with notions such as open source and collaboration, or the idea of grassroots innovation and developing capabilities at many, many levels. The second concept that I really worked to develop further in my research is not necessarily the concept of design thinking, which is, again, a little better established, but the concept of design attitude. And this is a rather new concept in our management and innovation literatures, and this is how it's defined. It's really defined as the skills, capabilities, and the abilities that designers are using to innovate in their process of making. So my dissertation throughout the different studies pushes this concept a little bit further, and the work of the innovation team at UNICEF was really very interesting for me to test how the presence of a design attitude in the innovation agenda of the agency is there or not, and where it's advancing and where it's confronted with challenges. So here's a diagram of that concept of design attitude, and we'll talk about it more as I share the example of UNICEF. But it's really a way of starting to define value and what designers bring when they're problem solving. So the first idea around design attitude is designers' ability to connect the dots when they are working in teams around very divergent and different disciplines and problems. The second concept that design attitude brings forward is the concept of creativity. We hear a lot about the need to be creative and ingenious, but the idea of creativity here is not only to come up with new ideas, but also to come up with useful ideas that can be implemented. Empathy is a third dimension of design attitude, and we hear a lot about the idea of empathy in design thinking and design research, and the ability designers have to connect with users and really put themselves in their shoes to try to understand the problem and come up with aspirational solutions. There's a concept of aesthetics that is embedded in the idea of design attitude, and a very important notion of risk tolerance, ambiguity tolerance in this construct that really plays out in a context of innovation. And so with this kind of theoretical framework, my dissertation really, through 3 studies, tries to see the kind of evidence of this in real organizations and in real contexts. So I did a number of case studies in this work. I developed a quantitative study that validates the concept and measures the concept, and then I did this ethnographic case at UNICEF. And I'm going to talk very briefly about the quantitative work, and if you're interested, please email me or connect with me. The dissertation is published and the study is available. But this was a very interesting problem to take this concept and try to measure how these different notions of empathy and creativity, how they would play out in a structural model, and run a number of statistics and multivariate factor analysis to demonstrate that, in fact, these dimensions are present and that these dimensions have a statistical effect in projects. And I was able to do that in this model. And here's a depiction of that conceptual model. What I was developing as I developed the survey was the ability to test how design attitude plays out in demonstrating positive social innovation outcomes, how it has an effect on team learning, and how it has an effect on process satisfaction in projects. As part of the study, I also got to look at regular practices designers use, such as visualizing and prototyping, and try to understand if these had also a positive statistical significance in pushing forward innovation. And I also was very interested in this notion of user participation. So if we bring users into programs earlier on, do we see better results? This was a 2-year-long process to develop this research with colleagues and mentors from Case Western Reserve University, including the Dean of Research there, Kali Littinen, who is a collaborator on this research with me. And it was challenging because we didn't have any scales before this work. So this is research that is now quite exciting because it brings us for the first time some very interesting quantitative metrics. And here's the results of that model. And again, it's quite technical and I'm going very fast, but if you're interested, the study is available. And what you can see from this is really the very significant positive outcome relationships between design attitude and its predictive value on social innovation. So proof that perhaps, having designers and a design attitude capability in your team can have a significance in the ability to move an innovation initiative or program forward. So that work was quite exciting. When I finished that quantitative work, I had the opportunity through a long-standing partnership with innovation team at UNICEF, where we embed students on a regular basis as fellows, and we have Mariana Amatullo, who's an alum now leading the design team there, with us today. I had an opportunity to go in to the unit and do a year-long ethnographic study and try to see if there was a presence of these different elements of design attitude in the team and in the organization. I was very interested in mapping the overlap between innovation agendas and innovation protocols at UNICEF and design attitude. Part of those were the research questions you see in the screen, and it was a very exciting opportunity to take very theoretical research at an organizational level and bring it back to the world of practice and the urgency of practice. And it was very exciting because, again, there is this very important conversation now and discourse about this innovation fever in international development. This was a Financial Times article from a few years ago. We have innovation teams being set up. We have titles that have innovation, and sometimes they can be ambiguous and they can be questioned in different settings in terms of exactly what kind of capability are they bringing. So this research was an opportunity to try to go deeper into this world. And it was also an exciting time to be doing this research at UNICEF because, as many of you know, the executive director, Tony Blake, has a very strong commitment to look at innovation as a real strategic part of the UNICEF mandate. UNICEF is approaching, of course, innovation to serve its mission, to serve the most vulnerable children. And the division of UNICEF and innovation continues to iterate and change. Even by the time I finished this research almost 2 years ago, things have already been restructured with the team, I understand. So this research involved several qualitative interviews and the shadowing of a project throughout the different areas of innovation at UNICEF: youth engagement, real-time information, access to information, and product innovation as 4 pillars that the division is moving forward in their innovation work. I had the opportunity to also look a lot of documents and data, and was very inspired by the innovation principles of the organization. And again, trying to understand their overlap with design principles. Many of these are very close, and of course they have been endorsed by UNDP and other organizations. But when you look at them very carefully, they really map closely with a lot of the principles and practices we have in design. The work of the innovation team and Mary's team, this is her work and the work of her team in design, was very interesting to map. You report, but also the team was in the middle of developing the Rapid Pro technology platform. And this was during the Ebola crisis, so it was really interesting to be a researcher on calls almost on a weekly basis and understand again how those design attitude behaviors and capabilities were manifesting. So going very quickly through the findings of the study, obviously I was able to see the manifestation and the proof of values such as experimentation being very present as a positive in the work this team is doing when they are dealing with risk in some of the new innovation projects and initiatives they are developing, and the ability to really leverage that ambiguity tolerance and that ability to connect the dots that design attitude brings is really having an impact not only within the UNICEF innovation team, but across the organization, across field offices. And that was a really wonderful set of confirmatory findings to have from this research. The second is much more complex set of findings, and not necessarily a surprise, that there is a real push and pull for innovation as an agenda and as a mode of practice at UNICEF and across the organization. And dimensions such as the ability the team has to tolerate ambiguity and to forge ahead in this space of uncertainty that innovation demands, with a lot of empathy and with a lot of practices that bring users to the forefront as programs get developed. All of that was seen as a plus. But there were definitely inhibitors and barriers to the work design attitude and innovation plays out in the organization. And those have to do a lot with the kinds of issues of credibility and legitimacy that organizations like UNICEF and UNDP have to respond to. So at a level of institutional logics, we can see in this diagram, you can see the micro meso level of how design attitude plays out in the organization. And if you read the model from left to right, from the bottom up, you can see how a lot of these strategies and work with designers at a level of a unit or division can be very effective. But as you're moving through the different levels of the organization with these programs, you run into more complexity as you're dealing with norms and established practices, and really organizational cultural issues that do not necessarily have all of the setup to embrace this kind of work. Still, the key takeaway of this research is that there are many generalizable aspects of bringing designers and design attitude into an organization and into innovation, into international development, and we should continue moving forward with testing these approaches in these organizations, because there is a lot to learn from them. I will finish this presentation very quickly by mentioning a couple, so that we have time for some Q&A, a couple of examples of how that is playing out in the work we continue to do at our Center for Design Matters in integrating designers in these teams, really very much informed by this kind of theory. So we have, with Design Matters, a fellowship program where we embed some of the best and brightest students and put them in organizations like UNICEF, UNFPA, and others for periods of up to 4 months. And they are welcomed by a team, they get a mentor at the team, and they are asked to work on a strategic project and are really integrated in a level that is a little higher than just having an intern in your midst. We have been running this program about 6 years now. There's about 9 fellows now a year that are placed around the world in different organizations, from organizations like Proximity Designs in Myanmar that are working around rural farming and technology in a very user-centered way, to large UN bodies, to social enterprises. The work we're doing with the Bloomberg Philanthropies Foundation is a very interesting set of experiences that we've been tracking in the last year and a half. Bloomberg Philanthropies, as you may know, is doing a lot of work with cities and mayors to innovate how cities deliver services and systems. And they have an innovation team playbook for these different cities, where they give up to $3 million for 3 years to cities to innovate. Both of the city of Los Angeles and the city of Long Beach in the West Coast are recipients of Bloomberg Philanthropies IT grants. And these cities tend to choose a very critical problem, and a problem that is usually affecting the city across different divisions of the mayor's office. So very systemic issues where connecting the dots becomes a key part of what an innovation team has to do. And they choose different issues, and we have been embedding fellows and designers in these cities for the last year and a half. This is the work of Justine Esquivel, who was just a fellow with the city of Long Beach this summer. And Justine came, she's a graduate student in our media design practices program, a program that really trains designers across technology, communication, and innovation. She came with a lot of background in interaction design and communication design, and she was really asked to think through the work of this I team and the city and the mayor, not only just to do visualizing and graphic design projects, but really to be that design thinker in residence with the team. And she had a very important role to play in allowing this team, as they were going through different innovation initiatives. Their priority was looking at new businesses and entrepreneurship initiatives for the city of Long Beach, bringing a lot of tools across the mayor's office to make this work visible and very tangible to people. So she was really innovating on the ground and doing a lot of work like the diagram here. So very abstract work that tries to parse innovation action items and make them really visible and understandable to the team and to colleagues. Clustering data in a way that basically organizes this data in actionable terms. She developed a number of toolkits, and one of the key takeaways for her in this experience was really thinking through of her role as an integrative force, as a person in the team that was bringing very different kinds of experiences and knowledge, and was able to kind of synthesize that knowledge and make it make sense for colleagues within the division and outside the division. So excellent work. All the work of our fellows gets articulated and documented in the Design Matters website. So if you're interested in going deeper with these case studies, these are really available. This is also work of Justine's portfolio, and as you can see, there's a lot of infographics and a lot of visualizing skill sets that are being brought in, and a very public function of these fellows. This is the mayor in Long Beach, Mayor Garcia, doing a very big press conference and explaining some of the city initiatives to his constituencies, and using infographics and a lot of tools that make that work again accessible and tangible and appealing to the public that our fellows designed. So our work with Marina Cano, Chris Fabian, Erica Kochi at UNICEF and Innovation Unit is a portfolio of work, again, lost standing 8 years. Minji Jim worked with Mari and her team last year, and she was an interaction designer embedded with the team. And Mari could probably discuss this work in much more detail than myself. But Minji was really thrown into the team and asked to work on many initiatives with developers, with program officers, within the team, outside the team. And the outcomes of this work, range from apps, a very wonderful lab she developed for the Innovation Summit in Helsinki last year that I had the great pleasure of being part of, to a lot of tools for storytelling and visualizing complex new initiatives. Here she developed a whole language of icons that team members could take and kind of adapt to different situations and programs they may be working with. And I think one of the fantastic learnings from our work with the innovation team at UNICEF and these designers is how much the work you all do here at the UN pushes us as designers to think anew about being very agile in how we communicate, given constraints of connectivity, technology, in field offices around the world. These fellows are really learning to adapt and really make the mission of agencies within the UN very vibrant, and thinking about innovating across time zones and across contexts of use that, of course, bring different cultural and different set of urgencies together. And this is, again, lots of information design, mapping, and visualizing complexity that these fellows bring to these innovation teams. So that is recurrent work. And finally, the work of Habin Cole. So Women Deliver here with headquarters in New York is another partner of Design Matters. And this is, again, a fellow that was thrown in to make a lot of the major Women Deliver conference in Copenhagen a few months ago a very public, bringing a visualizing public interface to the work of that team. And you can see a lot of infographics, a lot of very good information design, and a lot of understanding of how different points of entry with a very complex information that you're all handling, how can we make it really accessible to a very varied and diverse audience, and bring data. And we live in this world of data that we're inundated with, right? And how does design play a role in that storytelling, human-centered capacity to bring that data to the forefront in ways that might be an inspiration for policy and for change. That's a key part of the value that we see through the work of design and our fellows that we're quite proud of. So here are images of the exhibition in Copenhagen that the organization had. So very, again, very appealing and important public consuming kind of aspect of this work. So I think in the interest of time, I probably want to leave you with this quote. One of my favorite quotes, one of my favorite role models in management theory, Peter Drucker, who once said, "Don't try to innovate for the future, innovate for the present." And I think all of you are doing that here, and it's a real pleasure to join you today and share some of these insights very quickly. And happy to take questions. And I wanted to share that we have a book out, Big Dialogues. If you're interested in this landscape of how designers are innovating in both international development and social innovation, this is an edited volume that we produce that is out on Amazon and you can get everywhere. That includes the work of Mariana Amatullo here and Chris Fabian. And there are really conversations about what are this new frontier of how designers are working in these different models and spaces. So it's a set of insights from practitioners that are very inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariana. Thank you. It was very inspiring, and it's a lot of work you've covered, both in terms of the academic side of it as well as trying to bridge that gap with the practical work that's being done with some of the development agencies. I think we have about 15 minutes or so, and I'd like to maybe throw it open for a Q&A that anyone might have. I know we have 11 people watching online, so let's see if we can get their questions. But meanwhile, maybe we can take the first round of questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
Mariana?
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
So maybe you want to collect a couple of questions. So when I was listening to the work that you do, I was very interested to hear from your experience and from your fellows' experience some of the use cases. So, once you found that you were able to provide better aesthetics in the way that information could be digested, what are the impacts that you've seen because of it? Like, what has changed because of the type of work that you've done? I'd love to hear some stories about that.
Yes. So, and I think maybe Mary here, who was a fellow, Mary was a fellow at the UN Population Fund several years ago before entering the space. Maybe you can add, because you see these stories all the time. We see, the transformative power of these designers coming into these organizations. There is evidence that they are powerful because many of them get hired to be in organizations that didn't have designers before. And some of the most powerful stories are probably coming from the field in Myanmar, where the chief designer now is a former Design Matters fellow. He was sent to really work with the organization in capturing a lot of oral history that farmers have in terms of best practices in Myanmar. And he realized very quickly in his research that these oral histories were really being passed on from one generation to the next, and that there were no tools to get this information in an archive that could then be shared more widely. And he developed a whole, very simple technology through iPhones way of capturing these stories and starting a database for the farmers to have this knowledge outside the one-on-one sharing that they might have had in their families. And you start to, I think with stories like that, you start to see this tipping point of, how a communication capability and an opportunity to see a place for change can then have impact at scale. That's one story.
Yeah, I think what's been interesting for me at my time with UNICEF is that as a designer, and it's easy to assume that a designer, you can just go to them to request for visual communications. That's the default, right? To make brochures or reports. But by being embedded, it's been shown that people have started to realize that maybe there's more to it than that. And now that we have a design team at Innovation, you see us not just receiving requests to do these types of things, but now we're actually embedding ourselves within other teams, data research scientists, folks who are working on drone research or to those kind of subjects, and sitting with those types of people, understanding what they need and being able to articulate the work that they're trying to do, be it like speculative or coming, already, in a product development type of phase, and being able to sit that way instead of, and that's adding a greater value, I think. And I've been able to see that over the course of the last 3.5 years or so.
Mariana, I wanted to hear your views in the beginning, and also now you mentioned that like innovation is like the basic definition is to do something new that you can also scale, right? And on the other hand, design is very much context based. It's very much based on the empathy and the context. So how do you kind of what are the ways that design kind of bridges that singular experience on a very specific context to that kind of expectancy of scale?
Right, and I think it's it's a big dilemma and question. So thank you for posing it. I think it's all about how, going back to that diagram of design attitude and those capabilities, how you might approach design and the design capability, and where you might insert it in an organization or a type of program, and what might be your goal. I believe that most of the promise of design at scale is not in designing the artifact, so it's not in designing the brochure or the beautiful iPhone, but really in designing the system in an organization and the kind of environment and the more abstract aspects of organizational work that need to be designed to have those human-centered values so that these systems and protocols will work. In the case studies of my dissertation, I was able to really look at how designers working in organizations in Europe and Scandinavia, in government organizations, where again they're embedded very much like the work we're doing with Filbert here, how they make a difference. So you have things like redesigning the tax system for the government of Denmark, making a difference because there are values around ease of use and good interaction design principles that are put in that system that perhaps technology or developer may not have thought of. Those are the kinds of projects that do scale and have impact.
My question is kind of similar to the last one. I actually have two questions. So for the first one, based on your observations of the team, was there any elements from watching that teamwork that maybe could be replicated or implemented in different parts of the UN that are not helping designers on staff? And also that design attitude, is there a specific methodology that maybe people can start using to help them kind of understand their approach or just implement it quickly to group activities or projects?
Right, thank you. So in terms of the first question, yes, I believe there is, it was exciting to do this research with the innovation team at UNICEF, because the philosophy there is to think about replicability, right, in a very open source way. And I think the principles, the innovation principles, are an example, evidence of that. What has happened at UNICEF as an observation that definitely makes a difference is that there is a leadership buy-in and organizational buy-in at a top level. And while we know that that's not the only factor in pushing innovation, there's a lot of literature out there that demonstrates, right, the lever and the influence of leadership in giving sometimes permission for a discourse and a new initiative to start, and that coupled with bottom-up, good work, then can be very powerful. So what I would say is, trying to get leadership in different quarters and organizations, convince that an innovation agenda is important, is one learning. The second learning is that there is also, as much as there is leadership, there is a philosophy about not setting up innovation as a team of experts in one corner of the organization, but really thinking about integrating innovation across the organization, and that becomes about sharing budget, sharing program officers that might have a dual role, and that becomes a way of making this kind of work very sustainable because there's a shared ownership and a shared expertise that doesn't live in an isolated place. So that kind of distributed approach to innovation of UNICEF, I think, is a learning that could be very valuable for others. In terms of design attitude and design capability and bringing that on, Rittel, I had that quote early on about learning what the problem is. The same scholar once said that design is not the purview of only designers. And I firmly believe that we can learn from a design attitude, not being trained as a designer. I'm certainly not a designer. I'm much more of a design theorist these days, but I wasn't trained as a maker. I was trained in linguistics and art history. So I think that those capabilities, and there are a lot of tools and toolkits for design thinking that are open source and available. My word of caution and warning there is that you do not, there's a lot of complexity in implementing this skill set. So anytime you can invest in people that have been trained to do this, the way you might invest in a developer or a public policy expert, it is worth it. Becoming conversant with the value of these tools is one thing, but then knowing how to implement them in a way that's really effective, you do want the professionals, and you want to make that case for them in your organization.
I add a little to that. I think some of the ways we're trying to make it easy is, one, just opening up and at least for our team, to keep the space open. So, and letting people know that they can just sit with us and have that osmosis. And we've seen it work with just within the team of the designers are slapping Post-its up and putting their work up on the wall, and now you see the other parts of the team kind of adopting that naturally without realizing even that that's happening. And just the commingling has just allowed people to kind of take on this creative or this design attitude over time. The other thing is we've also been working on setting up sort of this ad hoc sort of design and talent pool. So we just have a list of folks that we know who are interested, who might be able to contribute something creative to a project. Maybe it's a short-term piece, but because we know that we can pull those folks on, and we have our alliances with the rest of the organization, they're aware that that resource is there, so they can call and tap into that. But have those designers maybe temporarily on a project on their team, and start to realize the value just because they brought them on for a short bit of time. And in general, just the networking that we've been able to do, or that we're doing back of when we find a designer at UNICEF, we're just like, let's be friends and have drinks and those kind of things, and let's share the work that we're doing. And that's actually really allowed this very nice community to develop at the office. So they're really cool. And the one other thing I would say is, if there's ever a partnership or an organization, a creative agency perhaps in New York, if you can sit with them, if your team or you as an individual can go and sit with them for just a few hours, every so often, just to watch their work is another kind of osmosis, I suppose, that can really help.
So could I add, I know we're at the 1:30 now.
That's right.
And not everybody has brought their lunch, so you have some rather hungry people. But I want to add two things before we close up for the afternoon. So one is that we have a fellow I hear heading to the UNDP Egypt office from Design Matters. We're looking forward to see what happens there. But in addition to design journeys that we've heard today, to using things like behavioral science to understand what is your user's journey, how do I make the choice architecture smarter so that people engage with policy better, so that they're able to implement and make the best decisions when sort of push comes to shove. So those are the things that we continue to test at the innovation facility and cross innovation teams everywhere. So if you would like to know more, reach out to Mariana for the presentation today and for it to us if you would like to learn more about what UNDP does, the innovation team, and Malika. And our information is at the door on the post as you head out. So any further questions or should we break? Great, thanks so much.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Mariana. I have to take
Yes, lovely to meet you, Mariana.
Malika,